A cold ultimatum reverberated through the council chamber. The Overlord Envoy's metallic voice grated against the collective pride of Earth's delegation. You have 7 days to surrender. Comply, and your species may serve the Dominion. Refuse, and humanity will be eradicated. Commander Elena Drake stood at the head of the delegation table, her steel-gray eyes unwavering as they met the flickering hologram of the envoy. Around her, the room was tense, high-ranking officials and diplomats shifted uneasily, the glow of emergency lights casting sharp shadows on their faces. Earth doesn't bow, Elena said flatly. Her voice was steady, though a storm raged within her. We'll die on our feet before we live on our knees. The envoy's mechanical laughter echoed ominously. You won't even have time to kneel. 7 days, Commander. The hologram fizzled out, leaving the room cloaked in heavy silence. Elena turned to the room, surveying the faces of her peers. Ambassador Niles Farrow, seated at the far end of the table, was the first to speak. That was reckless, he said, his tone sharp but measured. We aren't ready for war, Elena. The Dominion's fleet outmatches us 1,000-fold. Elena crossed her arms, leaning against the table. And submission guarantees our survival? You think they'll treat us kindly once we're under their boot? Niles sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. It's not about kindness, it's about survival. This is a fight we can't win. Not with that attitude, Elena shot back. We've faced impossible odds before. Humanity thrives in the impossible. Her words sparked murmurs among the delegation, a mix of reluctant agreement and deep skepticism. She knew the room was divided, just as the world itself teetered between fear and defiance. Later that evening, Elena stood alone on the observation deck of Earth's orbital defense station. Below her, the blue-green planet rotated, serene and unassuming in the void. The sight was a painful reminder of what they stood to lose. A soft chime announced Niles' arrival. He approached cautiously, his footsteps echoing in the quiet space. You're planning something, aren't you? He asked, his voice low. Elena didn't look at him. If I were, I wouldn't tell you. He sighed, stepping closer. Elena, this isn't about pride. Billions of lives are at stake. If you have a plan. Then it's because the alternative is extinction, she interrupted, turning to face him. You think I don't know the stakes? Every minute of every day, I feel the weight of it. But surrender isn't survival, Niles. It's slavery. Niles searched her face, his frustration tempered by reluctant respect. And what do you expect to achieve? Even if we resist, their technology isn't infallible, she cut in. Her voice softened, but her resolve was unshaken. We don't need to win outright. We just need to show the galaxy that the Dominion isn't invincible. His eyes widened slightly. You're not just thinking about Earth. Exactly, she said. If we stand, others might rise with us. The Dominion rules through fear, not strength. Break their image of invincibility, and the cracks will spread. The next morning, the station's war room was alive with activity. Technicians worked feverishly at their consoles, strategists pored over holographic maps, and whispered conversations buzzed with urgency. Elena stood at the center, issuing orders with calm precision. We need every satellite, every drone, and every civilian vessel retrofitted for defense, she said, pointing to a 3D projection of the Dominion fleet. They'll strike hard and fast. We have to be ready to counter before they establish a foothold. A young officer approached, saluting crisply. Commander, the encrypted broadcast is ready. Elena nodded, stepping onto a raised platform where a camera waited. She adjusted her uniform, her expression hardening into one of unyielding determination. When the light blinked green, she began. This is Commander Elena Drake of Earth. To the oppressed and enslaved across the galaxy, humanity will not bow to the Dominion. If you hear this message, know this: resistance is possible. Stand with us, and we will stand with you. The broadcast was sent, rippling across the Dominion's networks like a defiant flare in the dark. Back in the council chamber, Elena faced the gathered delegation again. The tension was palpable, but this time, there was a spark of resolve in their eyes. "You've put a target on all of us," Niles said quietly. Elena met his gaze. "Then we'd better make sure we're hard to hit." The chapter ended with a faint vibration underfoot, the unmistakable hum of ships powering up for war. Humanity was preparing for its greatest stand, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy might witness what it truly meant when humans declared, "Enough." The Dominion fleet darkened the edges of Earth's orbital surveillance. Sleek, black ships bristling with alien weaponry slid silently into formation. Their arrival was neither stealthy nor rushed, it was deliberate, a reminder of their overwhelming strength. Within the command deck of Earth's orbital defense station, Commander Elena Drake stood motionless, her gaze fixed on the approaching fleet displayed on the central holoscreen. "They're here earlier than expected," remarked Lieutenant Sato, her voice betraying a trace of unease. Around the room, technicians scrambled to recalibrate scanners and adjust trajectories, their movements hurried but precise. Elena exhaled slowly. "That's how bullies operate. They show up early to see if fear will do the work for them." In the war room below, Ambassador Niles Farrow paced like a caged animal. The hum of strategy discussions surrounded him, but his thoughts remained fixed on Elena's defiant broadcast. The message had been sent, piercing Dominion-controlled networks and sparking whispers of rebellion across enslaved systems. Niles had to admit, grudgingly, that it was bold, but boldness alone wouldn't save Earth. His comm unit buzzed. A junior officer's voice came through, clipped and urgent. "Ambassador Farrow, encrypted communications are pouring in from multiple sectors. It seems, some of them are answering Commander Drake's call." Niles' heart skipped. "Define some." "2 systems confirmed, Alaris and Norvetta. Both small, but both willing to send covert aid." Niles pinched the bridge of his nose, the tension unrelenting. 2 systems against the Dominion? That's like throwing pebbles at a tidal wave. "But it's a start," Elena's voice interrupted. She had entered the room silently, her confident stride commanding attention. "Rebellion doesn't begin with armies. It begins with a spark." Niles turned to face her. "And what happens when that spark becomes a wildfire, and the Dominion retaliates by snuffing us out completely?" Elena met his gaze, her expression unyielding. "Then at least we'll burn brightly enough for the galaxy to see." On the Dominion flagship, the Overlord envoy seated. Reports of unrest filtered in from the edges of their empire, small rebellions, seemingly insignificant, but troubling nonetheless. The envoy's jagged fingers tightened around the edge of his console. "Earth's defiance emboldens the weak," he hissed to his second-in-command, a towering alien with eyes like molten metal. "We must make an example of them." "Our fleet is in position," the second-in-command replied, his voice a low growl. "Orders?" The envoy's glowing eyes narrowed. "Send a strike force to their lunar base. Let their blood color the moonscape." Elena's instincts kicked in the moment the warning alarms blared. "Incoming vessels, 3 Dominion destroyers closing fast," Lieutenant Sato reported from her station. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Elena's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Deploy interceptors. Scramble defense drones. And make sure every gun we have is aimed at those destroyers." Outside the station's observation windows, streaks of blue light arced through the darkness as Earth's meteor fleet sprang into action. Interceptors darted like angry hornets, weaving between the behemoth Dominion ships that advanced with eerie precision. "Direct hit on 1 destroyer," shouted a technician. A cheer rippled through the room, but Elena didn't smile. She knew better than to celebrate too soon. The battle was brutal and unrelenting. Earth's defenses were holding, for now, but the cost was high. Elena watched grimly as a Dominion destroyer unleashed a barrage that obliterated 3 interceptors in one sweep. "Commander, the lunar base is reporting casualties," Lieutenant Sato said, her voice tight. "They're requesting reinforcements." "We don't have reinforcements," Elena muttered. Her mind raced, calculating the next move. Divert 2 drone units to the moon. Tell them to buy as much time as they can. The tension in the room was suffocating. Sweat beaded on foreheads, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of overheating equipment. Niles, who had remained silent throughout the chaos, finally spoke. Elena, this is madness. We can't hold out against them. Elena rounded on him. Then what do you suggest? We lay down our arms and beg for mercy? That's not survival, Niles, that's surrender. On the moon's surface, the battle raged. Earth's defenders fought valiantly, their makeshift weapons no match for the Dominion's advanced technology. But even as soldiers fell, they didn't break. The sight of Earth's flag, tattered but still flying over the base, was enough to fuel their resolve. When the Dominion forces finally withdrew, their destroyers limping back to the fleet, the cost of victory was etched in the faces of those who had survived. For every soldier who stood, 3 lay still on the lunar dust. Back on the defense station, Elena received the casualty report in silence. Her fingers tightened into fists, but her voice remained steady. Send word to the moon. Tell them they held the line. And what about us? Niles asked quietly. Elena turned to him, her eyes blazing. We keep the spark alive. The Dominion's counterattack was relentless. The cold void of space crackled with the energy of an escalating battle. Earth's defense grid, a patchwork of retrofitted satellites and hastily constructed orbital weapons, struggled to repel the swarming enemy forces. Every explosion was a grim reminder of the stakes. On the bridge of Earth's flagship, Resolute, Commander Elena Drake stood amidst a whirlwind of activity. Officers shouted updates over the hum of machinery, their voices tinged with exhaustion and desperation. Despite the chaos, Elena's presence anchored the crew. Her piercing gray eyes flicked between holographic displays, her mind analyzing the shifting battle lines with unyielding focus. Status report, she barked, her tone sharp but calm. Lieutenant Sato leaned over her console, her face pale but determined. Enemy destroyers are regrouping near our left flank. They're positioning for another assault. Divert drones from Quadrant 3 to intercept, Elena ordered. Keep their formation broken. We can't let them consolidate. On the lunar surface, a different kind of battle raged. Soldiers, engineers, and volunteers worked tirelessly to repair the battered defenses of the moon base. The scent of scorched metal and acrid smoke hung heavy in the air. Captain Devon Hale, a grizzled veteran with a jagged scar running across his cheek, coordinated the efforts. Move those supplies to the western bunker, he shouted, his voice cutting through the cacophony. A young technician approached, her uniform smeared with grease. Captain, comms just picked up a transmission from Alaris. They've confirmed they're sending reinforcements, ships and personnel. Hale allowed himself a brief smile. Finally, some good news. Let's make sure we're still standing when they get here. Back aboard the Resolute, Elena's plan began to take shape. The Dominion's overconfidence was their weakness, and she intended to exploit it. She called for a tactical briefing, bringing together her senior officers and Ambassador Niles Farrow. We can't keep trading blows like this, she began, gesturing to the holographic map displaying the Dominion's fleet. Their numbers will overwhelm us eventually. But if we can disrupt their chain of command, we might force a retreat. Niles folded his arms, skepticism etched across his features. You're suggesting a surgical strike? Exactly, Elena said, her voice firm. Their flagship coordinates the fleet. If we take it out, their forces will descend into chaos. That's a gamble, Niles replied. One wrong move, and we'll lose everything. It's a gamble either way, Elena shot back. But this gives us a chance to hit them where it hurts. As the crew prepared for the daring mission, the tension aboard the Resolute was palpable. In the quiet moments before the operation, Elena stood alone in the observation bay, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars. Niles found her there, his expression softer than usual. Do you ever wonder if we'll be remembered for this? He asked. Elena didn't look away from the stars. I don't care if they remember me. I care if they remember what we stood for. Niles nodded slowly. You're a hard person to argue with, Commander. That's why I'm still here, she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. The strike team launched under cover of Earth's orbital debris. Sleek, black shuttles slipped through the darkness, guided by encrypted navigation systems. Elena led the team personally, her pulse steady as she reviewed the mission plan one last time. Their target was the Dominion's flagship, Oblivion's Crown, a massive vessel bristling with weaponry. It loomed like a predator in the distance, its jagged silhouette illuminated by the glow of Earth's atmosphere below. Approaching target, Lieutenant Sato's voice crackled over the comms. Elena tightened her grip on the shuttle's controls. Maintain radio silence until we breach their defenses. No mistakes. The infiltration was swift and brutal. The team breached the Oblivion's Crown's hull using precision charges, moving through its corridors like shadows. The scent of ozone and the faint hum of alien machinery filled the air. Elena led the charge, her movements precise and calculated. Clear the corridor, she ordered, her voice low but commanding. As they approached the ship's command center, resistance stiffened. Dominion soldiers, tall and clad in obsidian armor, fired relentlessly, their energy weapons lighting up the narrow corridors. Suppressive fire! Elena shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Grenades exploded ahead, clearing the path. The team pushed forward, adrenaline surging as they reached the reinforced doors of the command center. The command center was a cacophony of chaos. Sparks rained from shattered panels, casting an eerie, flickering glow across the alien machinery. The Dominion's Overlord envoy stood tall and imposing, his jagged armor reflecting the firelight of the battle raging just outside the shattered command doors. You're a nuisance, Commander Drake, he sneered, his glowing eyes narrowing as he regarded the team. But no more than a candle flickering in a storm. Elena Drake held her weapon steady, her voice unwavering. This candle's already set the world alight. Your reign ends here. The standoff broke in an instant. Dominion guards surged forward, weapons blazing. Elena ducked behind a console as alien energy bolts zipped past, their heat singing her exposed skin. Her team responded with precise, disciplined fire, their shots calibrated to exploit the Dominion's armor weaknesses. Lieutenant Sato, crouched beside Elena, relayed updates over the comms. Commander, reinforcements are inbound, but we're outnumbered. We'll need to neutralize their shield systems to call in an airstrike. Elena nodded grimly. Then we move fast. Cover me. The battle intensified as Elena led the charge deeper into the command center. Her team split into small units, their movements coordinated despite the relentless onslaught. Every step forward was a victory, every inch gained a testament to their resolve. The Dominion envoy watched from the rear, his expression twisted in disdain. You fight with desperation, Commander. It's almost admirable, if it weren't so futile. Elena's reply was cold and clipped. Desperation didn't bring us here. Strategy did. She hurled a grenade toward the central shield console. The explosion rippled through the room, knocking Dominion soldiers off their feet and tearing a gaping hole in the defenses. Sparks erupted from the shattered console, the Dominion flagship's protective shields flickering erratically. Beyond the ship's hull, the tide of battle shifted. Earth's fleet, supported by rebel ships from Alaris and Norveta, pressed the advantage. The absence of the Dominion's shields allowed smaller ships to weave through their formations, delivering precise, crippling strikes to their larger vessels. On the flagship, Elena's team pushed toward the envoy. Lieutenant Sato and the remaining soldiers provided suppressing fire, pinning Dominion guards while Elena advanced. The floor beneath her boots trembled as explosions outside rocked the ship. You can't win, the envoy said as Elena approached, his voice steady despite the chaos. You think you're striking a blow for freedom, but all you're doing is delaying the inevitable. The Dominion is eternal. Elena leveled her weapon at him, her voice cutting through the din. No empire is eternal. Yours will fall like all the others, starting now. The final confrontation was fierce and unrelenting. The envoy lunged, his armor whirring as it enhanced his speed and strength. Elena barely sidestepped his strike, her breath hitching as she felt the air ripple from the force of his blow. Her movements were deliberate and precise. She aimed for the weak points in his armor, each shot chipping away at his defenses. The envoy's retaliation was brutal. He swung a blade of crackling energy, narrowly missing her head but slicing through a nearby console. "Is this your great rebellion?" he taunted, his voice dripping with contempt. "One woman against the might of a galactic empire?" Elena gritted her teeth, parrying his next strike with the butt of her weapon. One woman's enough when the galaxy's behind her. The tide turned when Sato delivered a critical shot. From her vantage point, she fired a concentrated burst at the energy core of the envoy's armor. Sparks erupted as the core overloaded, forcing him to stagger. Elena seized the opportunity, delivering a swift strike that sent him crashing to the floor. She aimed her weapon at his exposed faceplate, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. "It's over." The envoy's laugh was bitter, but there was fear in his glowing eyes. "You've gained nothing. The Dominion will send another fleet, and another, until your kind is ash." Elena shook her head. "By then, the galaxy will have already risen." The ship's structure groaned as the external battle reached its peak. Through the shattered command windows, Elena saw the Dominion fleet faltering. Rebel ships surged forward, their attacks devastating the remaining enemy vessels. "Commander, we need to evacuate," Sato called, urgency lacing her voice. Elena activated her comms. "This is Commander Drake. The envoy is neutralized. Shields are down. Execute the strike." As the team retreated, Earth's flagship launched a final salvo, a concentrated barrage that pierced the Dominion vessel's core. The Oblivion's crown erupted in a cascade of fire and debris, the explosion illuminating the void like a second sun. The aftermath was quiet, almost surreal. Back aboard the Resolute, Elena stood on the observation deck, watching the remnants of the Dominion fleet retreat. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Niles joined her, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and awe. "You did it, Elena." "We did it," she corrected, her voice softer now. "This wasn't just us. This was everyone who stood up and said, 'Enough.'"